In 2023, the Game Awards was met with displeasure for nominating the remake of Resident Evil 4. While every other game in the category was a brand new title, although it should be noted a new title in an already existing series, viewers were expressing displeasure for the Resident Evil 4 remake being featured since it was just a remake. Sure, just a remake that Capcom built from the ground up, not unlike the 2020 game Final Fantasy VII Remake, which received a nomination for Game of the Year with nowhere near the controversy that surrounded Resident Evil 4 and its nomination. The argument that Final Fantasy VII added new content to the game, split the title into 3 parts, and is creating a whole new wave of content for longtime fans isn't a bad one. But does that mean that a remake that changes things has more value than a company simply recreating a beloved classic? I recognize I'm in the outliers here, but I do not believe a studio should be punished for receiving accolades for completely remaking a video game that we've had before, especially given the difficult task of appeasing a fan base for a game as highly praised as Resident Evil 4 when it first released. This isn't just new graphics. Resident Evil 4 dared to be a little different. In the case of Final Fantasy VII, they dared to be very different. The remake craze that has hit the video game market so swiftly doesn't appear to be on the downturn anytime soon. Sure, we've had lots of remasters of some games like The Last of Us or Skyrim, which are proper ports with a few tweaked graphics. But soon enough, it looks like Microsoft is jumping on the bandwagon with Halo Combat Evolved. In the early stages of development, Tom Warren of The Verge claims that Microsoft does have a remake cooking, and this time it'll be on the PlayStation 5 as well. The first question that comes to mind is, why don't you just port the Master Chief Collection? The re-release of these Halo titles, all wrapped up into a pretty package, recreated the games as faithfully as they could for the modern gamer that missed out on the original Xbox. There was even a little button where you could jump between old graphics and new graphics when playing the campaigns. Or for those that grew up with the titles and simply wanted to re-experience the Halo games in all their former glory. But I think a game franchise like Halo looking at remasters begs a bigger question. Why are we remaking everything, and what does this mean for the gaming industry? There has been a small yet emerging theme throughout most of the content I've worked on for Beyond the Button Mash. Layoffs, layoffs, and layoffs. From retrospectives to the future to addictiveness in games, it all sort of comes back to what's going on currently in the industry, and that can be chalked up to one thing: uncertainty. Uncertainty is scary. It isn't just the unknowing, it's knowing that if we aren't sure what the future holds, it could be catastrophic for the things we love. From damaging a workforce for the next 20 years to permanently losing talented individuals in the industry, it is wave after wave after wave, and they are crashing harder every time in the gaming industry as of late. For those working in the video game industry, it has been an unstoppable typhoon as the bad news comes one after the other. And one way for a company to battle uncertainty is to try and create a product that they know won't fail. As gamers, we certainly look at past games with a high level of nostalgia. Banjo-Kazooie, Space Channel 5, even Halo are all games that I look back on and think that was incredible. And although I've replayed them and know, yes, I do really enjoy them, there are a lot of games I haven't bothered to replay and would be tempted to replay if the graphics, UI, and controls were modernized for new platforms. 2 games I can think of immediately were both re-released in 2023, System Shock and Dead Space. The former is considered an important entry into the horror genre of gaming and a spiritual predecessor to the cult classic BioShock, one of my favorite games. Dead Space, on the other hand, made waves within the industry and had 3 titles to its name before the remake came out in 2023. What stopped me from playing the original Dead Space was the nausea-inducing effects it had on me the first time I've ever experienced that in any game, and allegedly the remake solved that issue for many players. On an unfortunate note, if you enjoyed the Dead Space remake, a rumored Dead Space 2 remake was cancelled. We'll have to look to the past about Dead Space 2 and Dead Space 3 to continue our journey into that narrative. When I sat down to start working on this episode, what really struck me as odd is that Halo Infinite, I thought, had sold well. And then I remembered that they gave the game away for free day one on Game Pass. That, coupled with the game being in horrible condition upon release with multiple multiplayer modes missing, the multiplayer feeling completely different from past Halos with just a small change of the melee physics in the game. Halo Infinite felt like it just wasn't ready for us. I never even finished the campaign on Halo Infinite. The open world got me too distracted. I don't know what happens. It was weird and jarring to be playing an open world Halo game that just seemed to miss the mark. And I think I kind of expected Microsoft to take a bit of a break from the money horse before going on to Halo 7. I know they had said Infinite is forever, but there were so many things missing. Surely we're not just going to keep adding more and more to a game that apparently was a financial failure for Microsoft. And so, it seems, Microsoft will pivot. And they're going to pivot back to a remaster by the sounds of things. I find the idea of remasters taking over the industry, much in the way that sequels are currently taking over animated films, to be a concerning trend for the current state of gaming. I do enjoy remasters, and look, if Combat Evolved comes out and it's a spectacular remake that no one will shut up about, I will be playing it. Sorry, but not sorry. I will probably play and enjoy Resident Evil 4 at some point, although I didn't play the original Resident Evil 4, I did watch it when I was younger, so I get the idea of playing a game that you once have played before just in a remade state. I understand the appeal. I know Halo Combat Evolved is a good game. I also understand when Nintendo did mass porting of Wii U titles to the Nintendo Switch. Why wouldn't they? The Wii U had abysmal sales, and these titles just needed a bit more work to get them onto the Switch for people to enjoy for years to come. And most of them, to my knowledge, sold really, really well. But I think this remaster trend, coupled with the idea of developers trying to keep players on games for years now versus consistent new creative releases, is concerning. I don't really want my options to be the most recent Halo remake or a new MMO or a new MOBA. I want diverse games coming out consistently, and when an indie developer does launch, it takes multiple launches for them to be in a more stable position and considered safe. Not to mention small studios being acquired by someone like Sony or Microsoft and almost immediately shutting down the studio despite promises to keep it going. This isn't a one-off, this happens more often than we think, more often than we notice. I gamed a lot during the golden era of indie titles, if you will, and the sprawling diversity that launched throughout that time period was incredible. It was new ideas, new concepts, new genres in some cases. Some of these games, like Minecraft, would spiral and create loads of new games in the crafting survival genre. Something I didn't really see coming even with the incredibly successful launch of Terraria shortly after. It's hard not to look at that time with those nostalgia-coated glasses to think, wow, what a great time that was to be alive. To quote Andy from The Office, or paraphrase at least, I miss the good old days before I even realized I was in them. I didn't stop to appreciate what was surrounding me when we had it. And I'm trying to look around at the current state with remasters and endless content bundled into one game and attempting to find that thing that I will miss in 10 years. To say, wow, this was really the good old days of what? I think if anything, the thing that comes to mind of what this could be the good old days of is the idea of community. But even that, community's currently lacking, at least in Canada, in the real world. So am I just finding my community online, or am I happy and excited to be a part of a community for such a long period of time because we have a game connecting us for such a long period of time? I think back to times when I've raided on World of Warcraft or been a part of a guild or been a part of a PvP group and enjoyed surrounding myself with those people for so long. Being on a Minecraft server with friends or playing on a Terraria world. Playing any game with a dedicated server and just finding people online and enjoying their presence. Maybe it is community that is the thing right now. Maybe that is what I will be nostalgic of in 10 years. Although I hope I still have most of the friends I currently have in 10 years. But what is there to be so nostalgic about when we're being fed the same things over and over and over again by developers and expected to just shut up and appreciate it? To appreciate this hero shooter. To appreciate the next new MOBA, to appreciate the next new card game. Things, minor changes, nothing new or interesting or breathtaking. I'm not talking about all those great games that we think of and remember in recent memory. Those new releases that are exciting and making genuine differences in the industry. There's so much crap that gets released every day, and that is so mean to say. And I think back to that Ratatouille quote that I freaking love from Anton Ego. I believe it was written by one of the Two Thumbs Up guys. And I think back to that quote. And the reason why I think back to it is because it says something along the lines of the average piece of junk that someone makes is more worthy than the critics' consensus deeming it so. So I think to that sometimes when we talk about all of this. But, you know, I just think to sifting through all of that garbage and all of that everything on the Steam store, on the Epic store, on the Nintendo store, on the whatever store, And yes, there might be an argument to say that we should be nostalgic for the community that we're currently experiencing, or we're going to be nostalgic for these incredible stories we're getting, even though I don't know the last time that I really heard of a story and said, oh, that really makes me want to play that game. Maybe something like God of War Ragnarok. I'm sure it was Baldur's Gate 3 for most people, but those games only happen once in a while. That isn't a continuous thing right now in this industry. So if this remake trend continues on the up and up, which I think it will, I will say I truly do hope that we somehow get Donkey Kong 64 on a modern release. I don't know how, I don't know what format, but I just want that to happen and that to come out of all of this. And maybe then it'll all be worth it. And I'm jesting, of course, but I will be interested to see how this plays out. We are getting some of our favorite titles re-released to us. We are able to explore them in new ways and see different things about maybe what the developers originally intended or would have changed. But I just always wonder, at what cost are we getting all of this? As always, thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this topic and on the idea of remasters and remakes. Do you buy them most of the time? Do you play them? If you're playing them, are they a game that you've already played before? This is such a fascinating kind of drift off to the side, and it really caught my attention when I saw people talking about Halo potentially being remade and people talking about maybe a Halo 3 remake, which a lot of people have wanted for a long time, with expanded arbiter quests and expanded sort of storyline for all those jumps that we take in Halo 3. And so I'm just interested to hear what people think about this and to talk about it more, because remakes are here and I think they're here to stay for a while.